Legend of Total War here, and today I'm giving you guys my Total War Warhammer 2 campaign review. So what I'm going to do with this is provide you with two separate ratings for the campaign, because I recognize that Total War community is based of a wide variety of people. So what I'm going to do is give a review, a rating for casual players, that being for people who usually play, I don't know, less than 100 hours of a Total War game, or don't particularly play on, anything other than sort of easy or normal difficulty. Nothing wrong with doing that, but this game is not going to be great for everyone. And so providing just a standalone, just a slap one rating down isn't very accurate, I feel like. I don't think that ratings are very good in terms of rating a Total War game. I think you just need to decide for yourself what features you like or don't like and make your own decision about whether or not you like it. I think that a rating out of 100 is really not good, but I'll provide one anyway. So we'll do a rating for casuals and a rating for veterans. Veterans being people who, like myself, who have been playing Total War since the old days, since Medieval 1, since Shogun 1, Rome 1, for however, you make the judgment call yourself if you consider yourself a veteran. People who usually play a lot of Total War, more than 100, 200, up to 1,000 hours of it, I'll give a separate rating for you. I believe that this game is more geared towards casual or newcomer to Total War than to veterans. But I'll go through the campaign and I'll talk about the things that I like about it first, and then the things that I don't like about it. Okay, so here I am in a recently completed Nagarond campaign, playing on normal difficulty. So obviously this was not something that I did a Let's Play on. This was the first campaign that I played, and I was just playing at a casual rate. So I finished the game at around 162 turns, and I enjoyed it. I thought that playing as the Dark Elves was quite fun. I've gone and played all the factions now, and whilst at first I really hated playing as a Skaven, in fact my first playthrough I wouldn't even say playthrough, my first time playing as a Skaven, after about 2 hours of playing it, I quit out of the campaign. Not because I was losing, I was doing just fine, but because I just hated playing as a Skaven. However, I've since gone back in, played the Skaven again from a different angle, and now I understand them a little bit better, and I can say that playing as a Skaven is actually enjoyable, but you really need to learn, their quirks. And that's the sort of the thing with each of the factions to agree. I would say that if you're a more traditional, Total War player, like myself, that plays more of the historical things, the High Elves and the Dark Elves are probably more geared aligned for you. But if you're interested in more stylistic things with some quirks, definitely the Skaven or the Lizard Men are more for you, because obviously there's no humanoids in those armies, and it's just a different thing. So anyway, like I said, we'll go through this, and I'll go through some of the features that I really like about this. So I'll talk about the unique campaign feature for each faction. So with the Dark Elves, their main thing is slaves. Now, at first, I thought that slaves were going to be just like it was with Rome 2, whereas you get slaves, it increases your economy by a really tiny amount and causes public order problems. But that's not the case. They've actually made it a very high incentive to get as many slaves as possible. So I've got 36,000 slaves in this, and like I said, I think this particular mechanic is probably the best out of all the four factions. So what I like about it is when you win a battle, you get a certain number of slaves, okay, and the slaves get distributed to your settlements based on this. So if you don't want a settlement to have any more slaves, you click on them to have no more slaves. They won't get any more. Obviously, you would do that if you don't have any public order problems. If you really want to bring in those slaves, you request additional slaves. So, for example, if you had 10 settlements, and they're all on just a normal receive slaves, okay, and then you had 100 slaves to distribute, but you wanted, they'll go to 10 of them to each one, if it was all normal. But then you set one of them to request additional slaves. You did another battle, you got 100 slaves. Then this one would get 30, get 3 times as much, and the others would get the less. So they would all get 7 each, roughly, if my maths is right, which it probably isn't. So what does it do? Now, each settlement has each province has a maximum number of slaves. And it starts off a lot smaller than what you can see there. That's 14,000. As you build your settlement up, the maximum number of slaves increases. So that means you need more slaves to get more income increase, but also to have more public order penalties. So it sort of works the same. It's relative. In addition to that, it has a certain rate of decline. So the bigger you get, the more slaves you need to get, because they die at a percentage rate. I thought that was very interesting. In addition to that, going on to the rights, the Dark Elves are the only ones that actually use up slaves instead of gold, which I thought was really good, and something that I think that they could have capitalized with on the other factions. I don't see what the Lizard Men could have done, but the High Elves could have had some rights that maybe cost influence. All of it just cost gold. And the Skaven should have, in my opinion, should have had some rights that cost food, but only the Dark Elves were purely slave economy. And using the slave economy, I was actually, like, at first I had my reserves about it at first, but I ended up thinking, oh, I'm gonna enslave some shit, and I quite enjoyed it. The next campaign feature I want to talk about is for the High Elves, the influence system. Now, this is one that I thought really was kind of not that interesting, and one that I didn't really get a hang of, because I didn't see the urgency in it, which, to be honest, you can go through the entire campaign and not really bother with influence if you really want to. Basically, there are dilemmas that will occur randomly every few turns, and what choice you choose will either give you some influence and maybe a penalty to your faction, like public order penalty, or it'll do the opposite. You'll lose influence and get a bonus. And how you spend that influence, there's two ways. Intrigue at court. So basically, you can use it to cheat, not cheat, but like to excuse me, to get extra relation with other factions, or to decrease relations. And you can do that between other factions. So you can hypothetically make two people that hate each other like each other if you had enough influence, or two people that like each other, you could make them hate each other. That's one way you can do it. I found it was okay, but it wasn't something that I was using a whole lot. The other thing that you can do is that you can use the influence, to recruit your best generals. So most of their stock standard generals, hang on, let's find one here. Are they down the bottom? Yeah, they have a bad trait, but if they hired with influence, they come with a good trait. Some of them pretty good. But overall, I thought that this was... I feel like they could have done more with the influence. It was okay. So the Lizard Men, their unique faction feature, I suppose, is the Geomantic Web. And I thought this was particularly interesting. Now, I haven't really played that much in this particular campaign of the Lizard Men, but basically the way it works is that you want to connect up your regions with sort of like powerful rituals through a certain settlement called the Geomantic Pylon. The more you can build them up and you connect up the settlements, the better the commandments that you can get. And you can see, well, it looks pretty tiny. I don't know if you'll be able to see it on the screen. But basically, Tier 1 provides a small bonus, and then it goes Tier 2, 3, 4, up to 5. So if you look at this one here, this is the alignment of crafting, and it can provide up to plus 5 public order and increased wealth and stuff like that. So you really want to connect these regions up, not just have like a fragmented empire all over the place. I thought this was quite good in the way they implemented it. Very simple to understand, very easy to use. Now, like I said, we're talking about Skaven. When I first played it, I didn't really like how they played. However, I've since sort of understood a little bit more about the food mechanic, and I can talk about it now, I suppose, now that I actually understand it. So, the Skaven are the only faction in the Warhammer universe that apparently eat food. But of course, you know, it's not actually the case, it's just representative. But anyway, so every settlement that you own increases the maximum number of food that you have. Now, you get bonuses and penalties based on the percentage of that food. So if you own a lot of settlements, you need to have a lot of food. That being said, you can also spend your food to do this thing called the Menace Below, which is reasonably useful. When I first saw it, I was like, that looks like garbage. But it's particularly good because you can spawn your clan rat anywhere on the map, and I have found it to be very good at getting rid of enemy artillery, especially chaos hell cannons. Like, even when they're surrounded by their army, if you spawn a clan rat right behind that hell cannon and get it to primarily attack it straight away, you can wipe it out. I mean, don't get me wrong, that clan rat's doomed, but it'll take out the hell cannon at the same time, which I found very useful, especially when you're dealing with chaos hordes. That's not the only thing you can do with food. When you conquer a settlement, if you have a large surplus of food, you can basically just straight away tech it straight to whatever level you want. So if you capture a region capital, you can get it straight to level 5. But that being said, that costs a lot of food. Now, getting food, on the other hand, is a little bit more complex because settlements don't all provide food. In fact, very few of them even provide any food at all. You need to find places that have this pasture's resource and need to build it up. So that provides 6 food. Now, each army, regardless of how many troops are actually in it, will cost 1 food. Each settlement, regardless of how large it is, will cost 1 food. Now, overall though, you will start to consume a lot of food. So you need to do things like what I'm doing here, raiding my own territories. Now, on legendary difficulty, this kind of bullshit probably won't happen. This isn't on legendary difficulty right here. I was just playing around with things. So when you raid your own regions, you get the 3 food. Now, it's got an added bonus to raiding your regions. You cause a revolt to happen, right? And then you attack the rebels. Now, every time you win a battle, whether it be on the field or siege, you get some more food based on the size of the army that you fight. So, putting a bunch of like tiny lords here, and their only job is really just to gain food. They're basically supplying a constant stream of food so that Queek, wherever he is, can go and build settlements up. That's sort of how my campaign's been going on this one here. Overall, I felt that this was a good mechanic, but it's so easy to exploit using this. However, I sort of feel like that's in line with what Skaven is supposed to do, so I'm just like, yeah, I'm cool with that. This won't work on legendary difficulty though, because on easy difficulty, you only have to pay like 1% extra upkeep, but on legendary difficulty, you just can't justify having like 3 armyless lords raid your own region for food. You just gotta be a little bit, I guess, just need to go about it differently. Now, in the past, I have heavily criticized what I call the 644 system. 644 system was implemented in Rome 2, and what that refers to is the buildings system, in that the region capital would have 6 build slots and all the minor settlements would have 4 build slots. And I've hated that ever since Rome 2. I felt like it made the settlements not very worth it. And they've continued that all the way up to Total War Warhammer. But in Total War Warhammer 2, they've changed things up a little bit. We now have the 1044 system, sort of. Now, as you can see here, Nagaron, during a Nagaron playthrough, has up to 10 build slots. The major settlements on the map have 10 build slots. So that would also include Lothern over here. But if it's not a major capital, if it wasn't owned by one of the primary factions, so if it was just owned by a minor faction, let's go with over here, then it's only got 8. Now that's still better than 644, in my opinion. I think more build slots, more customization is definitely the right path. Now, in addition to that, the 644 system still exists on this, but it's limited to scaling type settlements, to Norscan settlements. These are the ones that don't have any kind, you can't build walls in this. Now I think that's appropriate because it means that not every settlement's going to be the same, and I kind of like that. I think they did a good job with it, but I definitely want them to expand upon this further in future titles. They're in the right track. Make it more worth it for these settlements. They're still trying to, in my opinion, they're still far behind where they used to be in the old Total War games. Okay, so another thing that everyone's going to be wanting to know about is the auto-resolve. Now, at first, I tried going through and just testing to see whether cheap trash could overpower superior armies that would lose in manually resolve, but could win in auto resolve. Now, I wouldn't go ahead and say that auto resolve is fixed, but they have certainly taken a step in the right direction. So what we'll do here is going to take this. All of these armies are complete trash. Now, Quick over here, we can't use him. Oh, hang on. Where is he? He's recently captured that settlement. However, these guys are out at sea. So what we're going to do is I'm going to use these 3 armies and show you what the odds are like. Now, this army here would obviously be slightly higher quality, but they're a little bit damaged. Probably taking some attrition. So what we do is we just attack this. And you can see this first army here, total trash. Can't do anything.
Most masterful of masters.
Second army, that will still lose.
Think me fool.
And then not until we send in the third army do we even stand a chance. So you can see that it's required 3 armies just to stand a chance. Now, we obviously can't fight this battle manually, but if we did fight this battle manually, it's very likely that we would overpower this anyway, just by the sheer numbers, and probably could manage it so that we didn't lose any units. Obviously you want to try and keep your units alive. So if we auto-resolve this, you'll notice that on battles where it's not completely in your favor, units will randomly just get annihilated. So it doesn't evenly distribute all the casualties like it did in previous Total Wars, like Rome 2, for example. Like in Total War 2, it's so easy to just auto-resolve everything. Or even same with Warhammer 1. You can just spam garbage, just auto-resolve your way through everything, and you'll never even end up losing that many units. You just recruit them all quite easily. But in this, if you auto-resolve, you really do take a risk. And I think that's a good thing, because what that does is it punishes lazy people. Now, don't get me wrong, you can still auto-resolve your way through a campaign, on easy, or normal, or even hard for that matter. You can still do it. But it's not going to be as easy as it used to be. It is actually now better to hire better units and fight the battles manually, which is what I've been asking for. And it's still not perfect, but it's a step in the right direction. And just a few small things to finish up on the positives of this before I move on to the negatives. There are now, since it's you're going to be moving around a whole lot on the oceans. At first, I thought it was not very useful, but later on, my opinion changed. Of these things that will randomly appear throughout the map, as you're floating, as you're sailing around, it is oftentimes worth it to, as long as it's on the way, to go and pick up some of these things. Sometimes you find trash. Sometimes you can find some really good treasure. Up to 10,000 gold sometimes can be stored on these things. If you're going along that way anyway, it's beneficial to get it. It's not at the beginning of the campaign. I think it is actually good, depending on the difficulty that you're playing. If you're playing legendary difficulty, not worth it so much, because having multiple generals just increases your upkeep cost by way too much. But on lower difficulty settings, you can totally justify having just one lord sail around, just constantly picking up all these things and actually making a lot of money. But like I said, on legendary difficulty, you can probably get away with it in the first few turns, but once you've still got a few more armies, that increase of plus 15% to upkeep costs really start to hurt. In addition to that, the AI on the battlefield, it's about the same as it's always been. It seems to make pretty good moves most of the time. It rushes. They very rarely take a defensive position, which is probably the best you can expect from the AI. Now we're going to start to move on to the negatives. So in that regard, the first thing I want to talk about is the campaign AI. I think it is terrible. Now, to clarify that, I think that this is actually a very difficult game to beat on the hardest difficulty. It was extremely difficult for me on legendary difficulty, but it wasn't because the AI was smart. And it doesn't feel rewarding when you defeat something that just has loads and loads of AI, just had loads of money bonuses and recruitment bonuses. So when I was playing on legendary difficulty, I found myself very difficult to field a lot of armies because of the crippling penalties due to upkeep costs. But I'd go up against AI factions that had half the number of settlements that I had. And by the way, the the way that the way the AI manage their settlements is just so dumb. When I conquer their settlements, you'll often find, or when you conquer their settlements, you'll often find redundant buildings everywhere. They love to build barracks in every single settlement, which is fine, but then you got to ask yourself, where the fuck do they get all that money from? Obviously, they have a huge base income. That's where it comes from. But, you know, in my opinion, the AI should have at least somewhat of an intelligent design in place of their settlements. You know, if they recognize, well, we've got 3 barracks in this settlement and they're kind of redundant, maybe we should demolish one and build a farm or something that's going to provide food or money. That would make more sense. But oftentimes you end up conquering a settlement just like, why is there only military buildings here and how do they have so much money? Because when I play it, I'm building economic buildings everywhere in order to be able to afford to have enough armies. This is of course on legendary difficulty. And the AI just overrides that with cheats. Again, I don't mind the AI on harder difficulties getting cheats, but I think that at the very least on the hardest difficulty they shouldn't be making moronic decisions. Again, I don't expect the AI to be able to, you know, be at the human level of intelligence. Computers are just not at that stage yet. But at the same time, the AI can be described as a screaming little child that is inherited $1 million from their daddy. That's what it seems like. They have so much money and all they do is just throw it around everywhere. The AI will waste their armies by running around in force march right in front of you. What they'll do, and this is something I can't criticize them enough about, the campaign map movement of their armies is so dumb. I like the fact that they've made it that forced march is a lot more risky now. If you get caught in forced march, you can't retreat and you can't surrender. You die basically if you lose the battle. But the AI love to just, if you watch my Asura campaign, you will notice how often that the Dark Elves run around in force march right in front of me, and how many times I just consistently just annihilate them again and again and again. Because don't forget, when they're on force march, they start off the battle fatigued, which is not a good place to start the battle, because usually with my artillery-based archer armies, they've got to move towards me, and since they're exhausted, they're too slow, so it really screws them on that regard. Okay, so to drive that point home even further, I've just started a new campaign as the High Elves, and as I've just said, the Dark Elves, they've gone and done a stupid thing. Now, I tested this before on easy difficulty, and I thought, maybe it was just easy difficulty that it happened, but and then of course you don't go over and destroy them. So I thought, let's see if they do the exact same thing again, but I'll up the difficulty. So I put the difficulty up to hard difficulty, and they've done the exact same thing. They've started off the campaign and put their army directly in earshot of my army here, and now I can just
no mercy.
Go. Then they can't retreat.
Sunfang hungers. My strength grows. I shall go.
This is on hard difficulty, by the way.
Shield against the darkness.
Okay, so that kind of thing is something that you will see all the fucking time. It's very dumb. It's something that we saw a lot in the older in Total War Warhammer 1. But in Total War Warhammer 1, they could run away. That was basically what they did all the time. At least in this, it is actually a lot easier to hunt down rogue armies that are running around like that, because they run around in force march. You can catch them a lot easier. But at the same time, the AI really shouldn't be so stupid as at the very first turn be like, from here to there, like, ooh, I'm going to move into force march. It's like, come on, dude. I mean, the thing is, I could see them, they could see me. They could see me right there because they've got visibility there. Plus, they've got the port here, so they can see in this area. So it was very obvious. But anyway, the next thing I wanted to point out, and it's a negative, let me just move on, is actually the sieges. This is why I wanted to play the High Elf campaign, because I've already gone through the High Elf campaign, so I know exactly what this settlement is like. It doesn't matter that and the balance of power isn't particularly good on this one. But we go in here, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. We're not trying to win this or anything, I'm just going to show you. So another big criticism that I'm going to have for Total War Warhammer 2 is the sieges. Now, the sieges are pretty much the same as Warhammer 1, and that's the problem. It is probably the sieges are one of the most unanimously criticized aspects of Total War Warhammer 1. Now, people were criticizing that about Warhammer 1 pretty much before it came out. I was able to figure out how to, to exploit the sieges. It's very easy to do. Anyone could have figured that out before the game was even released. Now, that was 18 months ago. So Creative Assembly has had quite a lot of time in development to, if they wanted to, make a change to the settlement system. Now, I don't necessarily expect them to change the layout of all of this, but there's clearly been a lack of innovation, I suppose, in a glaring problem. For one thing, the sieges are terrible. It's not fun to play, even when intended. They're designed to be epic. They're not epic. They're pathetic. They're boring. The fact that these towers reach all the way across the map, because it's such a tiny map as well, is really dumb. We're in both attack and defense. In addition to that, most settlements in this game will have huge blind spots where you can just not do what they want you to do. And so you can set up your artillery at a blind spot there, and you can choose to knock out a tower. You guys have seen me do it before. Knock out a tower, and then take your time and, shoot them. Bring a lot of archers to that kind of thing, and you can do this kind of thing with every faction. Because if it doesn't have archers, it's got magic, and magic is very potent in this. Now, if you remember my Let's Plays of the vampire accounts, that's what I did back in those days. I would hide all of my forces in a small tiny area on the edge of the map. It was a lot harder to hide it at the beginning of Warhammer 1, but this map is very easy to hide out troops, and I would just constantly use magic until it was worn out enough before making the attack. And that's how I would go about it. Now, in addition to that, the AI, when you're... let me just continue with this. When you're attacking, of course, they just sit there. They can't comprehend the notion of sallying out and attacking. They just will not ever do it. They won't move outside of their walls. And so, you guys have seen it. I've been able to take out 2 full stacks inside of a settlement just by being patient and attacking it. Now, sieges in a historical setting, that's sort of how they went a lot of the time. Sieges are not supposed to be this thing that was over in 5 minutes. No army in history ever walked up to a settlement and goes, I'm just going to attack this right now, and take in 5 minutes. With the exception of maybe the most brilliant generals like Scipio Africanus as an example. But to use another example like Hannibal Barca, an 8-month-long siege requiring multiple attempts at assaulting the settlement. And whilst I don't expect that degree of commitment in every given siege, the way it's presented here is too dumbed down. Now, on the inverse, if you were defending this settlement here against the AI, of course, they don't care that there's blind spots or anything like that. They don't try and be smart. Obviously, it would be annoying for the AI to actually try and cheese the system that Creative Assembly made. So they don't want to. It makes sense that they don't want to. Point out their own flaws. But anyway, what they do is they exacerbate the flaws by spreading their army out everywhere, which allows all of the towers to shoot them, and the towers are very powerful. Now, for example, if you're up against 2 chaos stacks, okay, and you've got a large garrison in here, enough to take out the first stack. The first stack attacks, and you repel it. Okay, the second stack, as it's coming in, will often mosey on in at its own time and own pace, and not join the fray straight away. They don't rush, they don't try and do anything, and they just sit there getting shot. So the AI is incredibly stupid in both attack and defense when it comes to sieges. When it comes to Total War Warhammer 2, the sieges are terrible. I don't expect anyone to disagree with me really on this point. I've never heard of anyone saying, oh, you know what I really liked? The sieges in Total War Warhammer. That's my favourite in all of the Total War franchise. I haven't heard a single person say that. And like I said, I don't expect Creative Assembly to have fixed it in this game, but we better not see this in the historical Total War games, because if it's got slammed in Warhammer, it's going to get slammed in Warhammer 2, and if it's in Warhammer 3, it's going to get slammed again. Anyway, let's move on to another topic. So the things I want to talk about now are more to do with features that have been in previous Total War games that have been beloved by most people, I think, and that have been cut from the more recent Total War games. And just because a feature is cut doesn't mean it won't be part of the review. We are the veterans, I suppose, of Total War. We haven't forgotten the features that have been gutted out of Total War, and the series is suffering because of it. And so what I'm going to criticize this game about is, of course, not continuing not bringing back these features that people have been clamoring for. So the things that I want to talk about specifically is population and dynamic economy, and to do with taxes and trade. Now, when I spoke to Creative Assembly a long time ago, they said that they felt like this system here was a lot easier to manage, and that population is represented in the settlement. To which I said to them, it's not. Because it's not immersive. There is no population here. There's population surplus, but this is what the settlements feel like to me, and I know a lot of people feel the same way. They feel like places where there's just buildings. Everything is a static income. The income from this building right here, 200, it never changes, regardless of how many population surplus or anything like that. You know, the buildings are the only things that make money. In previous Total War games, especially Medieval 1 and Medieval 2 and Rome 1, income was based on population, and the buildings would simply modify those base incomes. There would be a few things that were static, that would vary a little bit. For example, mining was a static income, and same with farming. But taxes and trade were based off the number of people and the tax rate. By the way, there's still no change to tax rates. We've lost that ever since Attila. It's just tax on or off. I think they do need to bring back the tax slider. I don't see any reason why that had to go. That was good. You know, I liked being able to put minimal taxes or very high taxes, but now it's just on or off. They're reducing the tools in which we have to be strategic. But anyway, talking about population. The population was dynamic, and also by as the settlement continues to grow, it would create squalor. So this is not like, if you just set and forget the settlement, it's fine. No, the way it worked in the older Total Wars was that the population public order was usually fairly easy to manage early on, as long as it was of your culture, but then as it continued to gain squalor, you need to continuously investing into the settlement. Whereas in this, especially on Legendary difficulty, you get a settlement, you've got the whole province, and it's got like no build slots. You couldn't possibly manage the public order because of the -8 public order penalty, which is completely static. It's not dynamic in any way. These static things that are to do with the game, like the static incomes, the static population, the static trade, it's inferior to the old system. So it's not necessarily a thing that's bad about this game. It's inferior to previous Total Wars. And what I really want to do with this review is really drive home the point of, I'm comparing this Total War game to other Total War games. It's part of a family of Total War games. The ratings that I'm going to give, it really can't be applied to other game titles. So whatever rating I give, don't be like, he rated Age of Empires higher. As an example, in my personal opinion, the worst Total War game, which I will say is Empire Total War, in my personal opinion. I think it's by far the buggiest pile of shit. That game is better than any other strategy game out there. In my opinion, Total War is in a league of its own when it comes to strategy. So if I was to give whatever rating, just understand that rating is in comparison to what Total War has done in the past. Okay? And even the best Total War games, in my opinion, that would be Rome 1 and Medieval 2, do not achieve a 10 out of 10 rating, or 100 out of 100. But they are the benchmark to which I would give a rating. That's in my opinion. Anyway, so with the lack of... I didn't expect this to be back to have changed from Warhammer 1, because let's face it, this game here, it does in many ways feel more like an expansion, not a new game. Because the reason why I can say that, or I feel like it's justified to say this feels more like an expansion than a new game, is because the core gameplay of how Total War Warhammer 1 works is essentially the same here. Now the next thing I want to talk about that I think is a negative is the actual Vortex campaign. Now, I've heard reviewers like IGN or whatever, praised this for basically fixing a long-standing Total War problem in that it eliminates the sort of tedium of critical mass. You know, when you reach like 30 settlements in any other Total War game, you've reached the point of no return. No one's going to defeat you. But with the Vortex campaign, you're never safe. You're not safe until you actually finish the final ritual. However, I think that's a good idea that's been very poorly implemented, largely because of a lack of risk reward. Let me just ask you guys a question. When you're playing a game, how much more fun is it that when you do something difficult, the game rewards you with something? You know, for example, with Final Fantasy, I'll use that as an example. You go and defeat Ultima Weapon or whatever, and then you get this awesome new weapon, or you get some new magic or something like that, something unique that you could only have gotten if you did that. Well, there's nothing like that with the Vortex campaign. The rewards are pathetic, and the risks that you take while doing, especially the later rituals, are pretty severe. Do not do this until you are absolutely ready, because even on normal difficulty, you are bound to at least lose 1 or 2 settlements. Because what happens is, and this is another thing that's bullshit about it, is that when you click that, settlement armies of Chaos and of Norsken and another faction, which I don't want to spoil it, but they pop up in a random location which you are not being able to predict, because I've tried to predict it. You put my armies at the ritual sites, and they show up somewhere else. You put them at the other place, and they show up at the ritual sites. So they just show up wherever your armies aren't. And these armies, they don't necessarily go for the ritual site. That's what they're there for, but they just go and cause a rampage across your settlements. Now, if you've got level 3 settlements, you've obviously invested quite a bit into them, and then they go win and they raise these settlements to the ground. After that, after you're rebuilding, you think to yourself, I hope at the end of this Vortex stuff, after I've gained control of the Vortex, there's going to be at least something to make this worth my time. And the end result is basically just, you won the game. Congratulations. And it gives you like a very insulting small bonus, which you really don't need. Personally, I felt like if you gain control of the Vortex, I wanted absolute power. I mean, I already had absolute power by the time I got it, but I wanted... You're in control of this huge swirling vortex of power. Let me just go and have a look at it, actually. You got huge control of this thing. This is what you've been fighting for the entire campaign. And the game just is like, great, you got it. Game over. And it just feels like, well, what did I do this for? I mean, if you're playing as Malekith, for example, you're bathing in the thing, does it make him any more powerful? No. Like I said, it's basically just, congratulations, you won the game. You're a winner. And it's just like, come on, dude, like, you could have done better with that. That's really my main criticism in terms of this. It's something that they could very easily fix in a patch and just be like, hey, how about some extra bonuses? Just reward the motherfucker for going through that on legendary difficulty, because this is, like, on legendary difficulty, this is really not easy. Like, it's probably one of the most difficult Total Wars to do if you want to go through the rituals. It's actually easier, in my opinion, to just don't even bother with these and just go hunt those guys down instead. Just go kill them, because once they're dead, you don't even need to do the ritual thing. And as far as the story is concerned, regardless of which faction you play as, it's basically the same story told from 4 different perspectives. It's got an interesting twist in it, but it's not like it's, the Dark Knight type of story. You in my opinion, it's okay, really. I certainly didn't play this game for the story. I play Total War for the sandbox experience. And like I said, I can appreciate them trying to make the late game more interesting, but you've got to reward the player a bit more than just to be like, hey, you're a winner. Everyone's a fucking winner in Total War because it's nearly impossible to lose. But in this time, it's like, you actually can lose, but you just don't get anything out of it. I know I'm sort of rambling on about that a little bit, but this is something that I really want to drive home, because the whole point of this campaign is the Vortex, and you don't need to do it. And in fact, when you do it, it's like you sit there and go, well, that was a waste of time. It's just like, you followed the rainbow, you found the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and you look inside, it's like, it's an IOU card in there. It's like, oh, get fucked, That's what I felt like when I finished it. So in summary, basically just want to say, like, I enjoyed this game, and like I said, I'm going to give a rating. Now, I fully expect that, this is the thing, no matter what way I go about a review of Total War Warhammer, there'll be someone that disagrees. That's because the community is made of different people. That's why I'm trying to be as thorough as possible. I know that people will disagree with some of the things I've said. Some people will hate, well, you know, don't actually want some of those old features back. Some people like some of the, like, they like the structure of the Vortex system. Perfectly fine. There is no right or wrong answer. But, like I said, this is why I wanted to do 2 separate ratings to try and be as accurate as possible. It's impossible to be 100% accurate, but I'm just doing the best I can. So, like I said, the first thing I wanted to do is start off with a casual rating. So, if you're a casual gamer, this is a must-buy in terms of a strategy, because the first 50 hours, I guess, are a joy to play. You'll enjoy this game. So, of a rating out of 100, I give this a 90 out of 100. So, if you're a casual gamer, if you call yourself a casual gamer, you don't care about Medieval 2 or any of that, you're gonna love this game. If you loved Warhammer 1, you'll love Warhammer 2. It takes the best of Warhammer 1, well, it really just takes everything from Warhammer 1 and puts it in a different setting. That's all there is to it. It's another way of putting this is saying, hey, it's 4 faction DLCs for the price of 8, with a huge map. Also, in regard to the map is huge. It's 225 settlements. It's the largest campaign map we've ever seen in a Total War game. That gives it a thumbs up from me, but, like, it's, you know, it is missing some guts of the features. Now, in terms of, like, the, what I would call a rating for the veterans, I would actually give this 60 out of 100. Now, the reason why I would give it such a low rating is because it's simply just missing so much content that used to be in other Total War titles. But if you add both of those ratings together, then you get about 75 out of 100. So that's, if you want to give it one standalone rating from me, that's what I give it. But like I said, I think that more casual gamers are going to enjoy this more than veterans. People who love Medieval 2 are probably going to be turned off by this game. If you didn't like Warhammer 1, you're not going to like Warhammer 2 because it's more of the same. In that regard, it's also very difficult to say, yeah, this is a clear sequel, because it feels like an expansion. I'll put it this way. This is either the best damn expansion CA has ever produced, or a pretty middling sequel, because it doesn't take the series any real further. It's just a different location. And like I said, the Vortex is completely underwhelming, in my opinion. As somebody who likes to sandbox and build an empire, I don't usually worry about gimmicky type victory conditions. I just want to crush my enemies and see them suffer underneath my boot. That's how I've always wanted to play it. And I know there's a lot of other people that like it that way. Some people will like the Vortex mission, others won't. It's a mixed thing. You need to make up your minds yourselves. Don't just listen to me either. Make up your own mind. If you disagree with my rating, fine. Don't listen to me then. I've given you my perspective. That's all I can do. So, in summing up, I like this game. I don't love it. That's the end of this review. I'll see you next time, fuckers.